guys, welcome to the Choke Points. Today we are going to talk about the most important news coming out of US Saudi politics right now, which is the claim that Saudi Arabia is investing $1 trillion into the United States and that this massive number is somehow a direct result of President Trump's diplomacy. But here's the real question that we need to answer. That does Saudi Arabia even have the global investment footprint to push $1 trillion abroad? And how much has the Saudi Arabia actually invested inside the United States so far? And when politicians say investment, are they talking about the real capital flows or are they bundling, trade procurement, future promises into single inflated number? Now, because when we compare the $1 trillion headline with Saudi Arabia's real investment in the US, which is just $16.3 billion as of 2024, this gap is massive. And the gap tells us most of us what we need to know, right? So, in this episode, we are going to break down the entire story piece by piece where the claim came from, what's real, what's spin, and how much of this $1 trillion narrative actually collapses when we look at the actual data. So, before we get started, please do like and subscribe and let's get into it. So, before do I do anything, let me actually share my slide. Okay, let's look at the news, let's talk about those things, and then we will get into the analysis of it. All right. So, first of all, this is the news. Now, news says that President Donald Trump's lavish welcome to the of Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman to Washington this week, touted by many as rehabilitation of human rights records of Saudi Arabia's de facto ruler, has been followed by the kingdom ramping up its planning US investments to $1 trillion. Now, the move marks a remarkable increase from 600 billion that the world's largest exporter announced during Trump's visit to Riyadh 6 months ago. Bin Salman is scheduled to meet up US corporate leaders on Wednesday. Okay. And here are some of the deals and frameworks announced by US and Saudi Arabia this week. Energy sector, the US and Saudi Arabia signed nuclear cooperation pact, laying groundwork for decades long partnership and ensuring projects meet strict non-proliferation standards with American firms as preferred partners. Progress on such a nuclear pact, long sought by bin Salman, has been difficult because Saudis have resisted US stipulation that would rule out enriching uranium or reprocessing spent fuel, both potential paths to a bomb. US Energy Secretary Chris Wright said on Wednesday the nuclear deal does not allow enrichment. Then separately, Saudi Aramco said it has signed 17 memorandum of understanding, that is MOU, and agreements with major US companies carrying out a potential value of more than $30 billion. The critical mineral next is critical mineral, right? The Washington Riyadh Inc. mineral framework expanding collaboration to diversify supply chains and bolster US resilience, building on similar agreements. Now, critical minerals have become a key pillar of geopolitical negotiations after the US China trade war exposed the overt reliance of several supply chains worldwide on Asian countries. Separately, MP Materials MPN said on Wednesday it would build a rare earth refinery in Saudi Arabia with the US Department of Defense and Saudi Arabian state owned mining company Madan to expand Middle Eastern processing of critical minerals. Now, there is a lot going on in this thing. So, first of all, let me actually start my pen. I just forget that all the time. But, anyways, now, this is going to be very interesting. Okay. Now, first of all, let's look at the energy sector that they're talking about. US energy sector ensuring this the nuclear pact right here. Okay. Does not allow enrichment. Okay. Now, here's the problem with this thing. The Saudis have been wanting this civil nuclear deal for a very long time. And in fact, Saudis Saudis decided to go towards BRICS. They decided to align themselves towards the BRICS in order to put pressure on the Biden administration last year to make sure that Biden and his administration understands the consequence and the importance of Saudi Arabia. Now, what actually Saudi Arabia has been wanting is that they are looking to get the civil nuclear deal. Yes, they will sign NPT, they will sign all those mumbo jumbo, no enrichment policy and all that. But what Saudis are saying behind the closed doors is that yeah, we will sign all that, but you will have to turn the blind eye towards us when we enrich and when we build a nuclear bomb. And we will keep the nuclear bomb just like Israel's did. That Israel has the nuclear bomb, but Israel never speaks of it. Okay, so that's what Saudis actually have been wanting, and in this deal, they got it. Now, then comes the next part, right? The next part was the rare earths. Now, $1 trillion. See, I'll break this whole thing down, but first of all, let's talk about the whole entire headline a little bit more. Now, the headline basically originated in the White House. Now, if you look at my screen here, so I said President Trump takes huge victory lap on convincing Saudi Arabia to almost double their investment in the US to $1 trillion. Saudi Arabia initially had pledged $600 billion. They will invest incredible $600 billion today. I said, anyway, you can up that. He said, I will up that to 1 trillion. So he's investing 1 trillion in the United States. Only President Trump, right? Now, then another one is we are told that $270 billion in agreements are sales being signed between dozens of companies. Sales is not investment, meaning that US companies are going to sell lots of stuff to Saudi Arabia that is worth $270 billion. Now, who I care about the most, I want to thank you for bringing all those jobs and all those great opportunities to America and bringing great wealth to America. All these things, all the good stuff was said. Okay, pleasantries were exchanged, good stuff was said, and lots of things happened. But the real question is this: real question is that does Saudi Arabia even has the financial capacity to make such investment? Right? If they don't have the financial capacity to make such investment, then how they're going to do that? That's one point. Second point is that if Saudi Arabia doesn't have the financial, let's say Saudi Arabia has financial capacity one way or the other. Okay, just hypothetically. Okay, if they can invest that much money, have they even looked into the ROI of a return of investment? In which sector they are going to invest that they're going to get the ROI, a positive ROI for their investment that they're going to make. Considering the state of affairs in the American economy right now, dollar is crumbling, the national debt is rising, all these things are happening. So my question is that is it even worthwhile? I mean, is it are is Saudi Arabia even going to get the ROI, any positive thing? Because if you look at it, the reality is that even US companies have moved out of the US because of this reason, because they don't see the profitability into it. Maybe, yeah, maybe Nvidia may be saying all these things, but can Nvidia afford to really exist within the US investments? So far they may be saying all that, but that's a different story about Nvidia. And also that's just one company. Where is the manufacturing really? Right? And all the manufacturing has been moved. Look at all the car manufacture. The whole entire Detroit is suffering because of this. That Ford and other motor, GM, General Motors, and everything else, they all just moved their manufacturing somewhere else. So let's look at the numbers here real quick, and then we will talk about it somewhat more. So let's check the Saudi Arabia's financial capacity. Saudi Arabia's nominal GDP is roughly $1.27 trillion, meaning $1 trillion equals nearly 80% of 1 year's of economic output. Out of that, 90% of the economic output, that 1.27 trillion GDP, the almost 90% comes from the oil sales. Okay, And then public investment fund manages around $913 billion. We are looking into everything, all the money that is there in Saudi Arabia. We are talking about 1.27 trillion in GDP. Then we are talking about 913 billion, okay, with $913 billion in public investment funds, that is PIF, with most capital tied up into domestic Vision 2030 projects. So Vision Saudi Arabia has a Vision 2030 project, which is going to be about investing into Saudi Arabia's infrastructure build-up. Okay, because in order to diversify its economy from the oil, they want to move away from oil. That's what the whole Vision 2030 is. That is MBS Mohammed bin Salman's dream project, but so far it's not doing very well. Okay, now foreign holdings make up only a small portion of PIF's portfolio, and the trend has shifted further towards domestic spending. So, what does that mean? It simply means that whatever foreign investment Saudi Arabia does, it's not that much, especially not $600 billion. They don't invest that kind of money anywhere. Okay, now at least not year by year basis. Okay, that the Saudi Arabia is not going to invest $150 billion in one country per year like that. Okay, now PIF has already absorbed large losses, okay, including multi-billion dollar write-downs connected to NEOM and Giga projects. These projects have failed. So the PIF has already taken losses, okay? Now, Saudi Arabia's central bank reserves sit between 410 to $460 billion and are required to defend the Riyal's dollar peg. All these Middle Eastern countries, their currencies are pegged to the dollar itself. So, meaning that some damage happens to the dollar, their currency suffers too. Okay, so which means that if US economy is suffering, then Saudi economy is not doing so great either. Okay, now if that was the case, real would be the reserve currency, not dollar or some other currency. That, and also if you look into it, it's because of this pegging. If you go look into the currency ranking globally, you will find that uh, most the top 10 out of 10, I think the 9 are probably the Middle Eastern countries, their currencies. But technically those are all since they are pegged to the dollar, so whatever happens to the dollar, or or whatever trade and everything happens over there in the Middle East, so their currency actually stays really really strong, simply because of the trade volume. All right, now, and the Saudi government is running fiscal deficits and cannot deploy hundreds of billions abroad without undermining domestic priorities. That's another factor into it. So so there is no financial scenario where Saudi Arabia can free up at least 600 billion to $1 trillion in liquidity capital for US investment. That's the reality of it, meaning that Saudis do not have that kind of financial capacity. Like I said earlier, that just in 2024, the total Saudi investment FDI in the US was $16.3 billion, give take. That's it. Saudis have, I will give you the example of other countries as well. Just recently, Saudis made almost $70 billion investment commitment in India over the period of 10 years. I think it was 5 or 10 years. It wasn't even the per year basis. So and every country wants to invest in India right now, but what's happening, even Saudis are committing up to $70 billion, just that's it, and that is also broken down into the over the period of time. It's not just that, okay, let's do it annually. Okay, so clearly we can see that Saudis don't have that kind of capacity, at least as far as liquid cash is concerned. Okay, so how does actually how does it how do people think that, why people say that, okay, Saudis are very rich and this and that? See, it's mostly Saudis are very rich and all the mumbo jumbo that is said for two reasons. Number one is that uh first thing is it's media propaganda. Okay, that's number one thing. Second thing is that is the population as well. So population as in that the total population over there. And the third reason is that it's a kingdom. It's not a country that follows, your usual norms to really uh, follows a usual norm to really, give you the exact data or exact exact thing. They do all these things because they can manipulate the data, and the whole uh, what you call it, the whole dream that yeah, it's awesome and this and that is what actually is keep maintains the peace in the kingdom and keeps things in order. Because if they start to show all the bad data, what do you think is going to happen? And lots of times we end up seeing those, fancy cars and all that. It's because of the oil sale. Money is coming in really, really fast, and it's getting concentrated into one or two families. Okay, so so the reality of Saudi Arabia is this. Okay, reality is that most of the business that you see over there, it's all family owned business. Okay, they're all part of the royal family. All right. Now, since they're all part of the royal family, so that's why whatever businesses and to an extent you see a large population basically because of this, they drive fancy cars and all that. And that's what people get to see. So they think that it's so rich and this and that. All right. So that's the richness story. Otherwise, if you go live there, then you actually realize that there is so much censorship, there's so much stuff going on that anything that comes out of there, you will have to take it by the grain of salt. All right. Now, now coming to the another point. The see, so first we established that Saudi Arabia doesn't have that kind of capacity. All right. Now, if Saudi Arabia doesn't have capacity, now let's say hypothetically, let's say Saudi Arabia has the capacity. So question is that does the US have that kind of sectors to really absorb that kind of fast investment? Does US has that kind of uh, capacity to absorb all that? So let's look at those numbers, all right? And these numbers, I'm not making these numbers. These numbers are given in all these news and all that. If you go read into it, you will see. So first of all, defense. Now, if all the $80 billion annual defense spending went to US firms for 4 years, even the maximum is $320 billion. $80 billion comes from Saudi Arabia's annual defense budget. That's what Saudi's annual defense budget is. So but in reality, the US share is around 120 to $150 billion in that, because Saudis buy lots of things from other countries as well. Okay. Then you have civil nuclear deals. Okay. So just the one that just happened, right? One or two reactors, fuel services, and long term cooperation basically will produce probably 20 to $40 billion. I mean, in fact, those are the inflated numbers, in fact. Okay. It's not going to be that even that much, because if you build a nuclear reactor, probably so it will cost you $5-6 billion, give take, that's it. And if you're building for entire Saudi Arabia, you don't really need that many nuclear reactors over there. All right. Now, AI and data infrastructure, realistic deployment into US cloud GPUs and data centers is almost 10 to $30 billion. That's what number is given. Okay. And critical minerals and energy transition. This is why I read the news to you first. Okay. So that you can actually see the numbers, and understand all these things. Now, joint ventures and supply chain partnerships amount to a 10 to $30 billion. Even that is also exaggerated number. Now, real estate financial stakes, basically historically single digit billions per project cumulative overall. If you look into real estate financial stakes, so real estate as in like building mall and all, right? Mall, shopping centers, all that. So, for example, Saudi Arabia's trademark companies Lulu. You will see Lulu shops in different malls. You will find them selling apparels or purses and all that. That comes directly from there. Okay, so you have to understand this. So all that probably 10 to $20 billion. So total, basically, if you look into the all, if you add up all this, which will be almost 200 to $300 billion over 8 to 12 years. It's not like something that it will just start to happen all of a sudden. And this is, I'm giving you, this is exaggerated number. Okay. So whatever you look into, there is no path from these sector realities to $600 billion, let alone the $1 trillion. I mean, whatever you do, there is nothing. There is no way that US can even absorb that kind of capital inflow right away. Okay, that's gonna happen 8 to 10 years in that long. So US is just not even ready to absorb all that. Why? Because whatever money they print, all that goes into the market, and then it comes back to Saudi Arabia. Now, unless there is a way, okay, don't get me wrong, there is a way to put the money into US market in a different way. What that way is, can you guess? See, the way that way is to that Saudis actually start funding the crypto projects and move the crypto into US market. And when they move crypto into the US market in a large amount, then you will see that crypto actually is going to go up. Okay, so that is a possibility that Saudis may do, but Saudis don't even have that kind of crypto infrastructure either, because Saudis are too afraid of infiltration, lots of other security related issues once you start to handle the crypto that much. So I don't really believe the Saudis are even going to uh, even do the crypto push into the US market either. Okay, now let's look into the why of it. Why Saudi Arabia really cannot afford to bleed that much cash? Meaning that, see, what is it? First of all, we established the Saudis are not going to invest. They don't have the capacity. Second thing we established is the US market cannot absorb it. What does that mean? That means that it leads to the next thing that I'm going to talk about. That why Saudis cannot afford to bleed cash in the US market. That is the return of investment. Let's say Saudis invest. Okay, let's look at it. Let's say Saudis invest in US market. Okay, the Saudi Arabia's capital is not that much of an edge, strategically scarce and needed to for Vision 2030, tourism, sports, mega projects. Okay, then PIF targets around 7% annual returns to ensure future fiscal stability beyond oil. Okay. Then US offers limited ROI today. US economy is suffering. All the US companies that themselves are out, like Apple is out. You can see Nvidia was in China for some time. Then all the chip manufacturing is out, all the computer manufacturing is out, raw material processing is out. Why do you think the President Trump was so worried about the rare earth? They were trying to cut a deal with China, because China, simple thing is that China does not really bother about all these things. Chinese are saying that if you are going to provide Tomahawk to Ukraine, then we are going to simply block all the rare earths. That's what Chinese are saying. And behind the scenes, this is what's happening, and nobody is telling you these things. Okay? So don't fall for all that rare earth and all that the mumbo jumbo that is being told that we'll send Tomahawk. The reality of Tomahawk is that they cannot manufacture enough Tomahawks with the existing raw material stockpile. All right. And Chinese are not going to send that thing. So because they cannot do that, so Tomahawk is not going to go to Ukraine. And that's why, if you notice, that nobody's talking about Zelensky now, nobody's talking about sending Tomahawk, and nobody's talking about any kind of other Russia Ukraine thing, simply because of the repercussions of it. All right. It has become a national security threat at this point. So now let's move further. Okay. So AI and cloud spending is massive, but currently produces thin or negative short term returns for even top American companies. And we already know that there is already a talk about AI bubble burst too. There is a talk of AI bubble burst because AI is not producing the results the way everyone was expecting it to produce. Okay, yes, you can set up agentic AI, you can set up something, you can set up all that, but agentic AI is also not doing anything fancy as such that was not being done before. All right, so, and that's the only thing. Other than that, if you start to get the return of investment, meaning that if you're investing into the infrastructure, you gotta get the output out of it. Now, if you are not getting any output out of it, the amount of money that you're pouring into something, right? And if you're not getting that much profitability or any kind of output out of it, then doesn't matter how cool it is, it's just not viable as far as business is concerned. Okay, so AI and cloud computing, cloud maybe a little bit, but AI overall is going to be a bust in a very short period of time. Now, so, and as I said earlier too, that US firms are themselves are relocating their production to countries like India, Mexico, Vietnam, China. All that is happening already. Okay, So Saudi Arabia cannot justify losing tens or hundreds of billions of dollars in a low return US environment while domestic projects remain underfunded. So those things are already happening. Okay. So Saudi is saying that they're going to invest this much, that much, all that mumbo jumbo. That is just not going to happen. Even if they dump something, they're not going to have any kind of return of investment. And let's say rare earth deal, like critical minerals and all that, do these that we saw in the news. The reality of rare earth is that China got to that dominance is because China's Chinese government has provided lots and lots of subsidy into rare earth processing and extraction. It just didn't happen overnight, and it took almost 30 to 40 years for Chinese to get to that point. Okay, and given the current state of affairs in this country, in the US, I don't know how long that's gonna take. And so it's saying that, yeah, let's put it into South Saudi Arabia. Putting something in Saudi Arabia, what does Saudi Arabia has that you're going to put something in Saudi Arabia and get a better result out of it? Saudis don't even have the proper manufacturing line. All they're doing is they're buying Chinese products from here and there, and then they are selling it into their own malls. That's why they are more invested into real estate than anything else. Saudi Arabia, Saudis don't have the mineral processing. Keep it, there is only one mining company. That's about it. What are they mining? Only God knows. So, so, so the point is that a large scale, large share of basically the $1 trillion can only be explained by recounting purchases, not genuine investment decisions. That's what it is. And actual Saudi FDI in US as of 2024 is $16.3 billion total. That is 0.016% of $1 trillion claim. Now think about it. A country that has never invested even $20 billion per year is claiming that they're going to invest $600 billion in the United States. Go figure. Okay. Now, then why all this hoopla? See, the hoopla is because Saudis were inclining towards the Middle East. And that's one aspect of it. Sorry, Saudis were inclining towards the BRICS last year. Okay. And they still attend the foreign ministers meeting and all that. All right. That's number one thing. Second thing is that President Trump wants everyone to sign the Abraham Accord. The second thing. Third thing is that Israeli concerns. Saudis have the Israeli concern since 1953, and it is still there. And now they have Iranian concern as well. So, lots of these things are basically the political signal that hey, we are still aligned towards US. We are this and we are that, just to show that hey, please treat us special, otherwise we will go somewhere else. That's the whole point of it. Okay. And by doing all these things, uh, see, another thing is that the forest for the trees, right? So you want to create a diversion of the from the actual thing. What is the actual thing? Actual thing is the civil nuclear deal. Okay, civil nuclear deal that will help Saudis in creating a nuclear bomb. Yes, Saudis are saying that they're not going to enrich anything, but chances are that they will. But here's the question, though: if that is the question, that is the whole point. Okay, you have to understand this. If that is the whole point of it, then Israelis are not going to be very happy about it. Okay, if Israelis are not going to be happy about it, then we may see some problems for President Trump's term as well overall. And what will happen, only God knows. Okay, but we will see more protests. We will see more and more of lots of drama going on if what I'm saying is correct. Okay, and because Israelis simply don't want any country to have nuclear weapons in that region. That is a serious concern for the Israelis. So let's see how this is going to play out, because I'm pretty sure that Israelis are watching this thing very closely. All right. So So the mainly two or three reasons, like I said, the one is the BRICS. President Trump's goal is to make sure that Saudis don't get aligned with BRICS, because aligning with BRICS meaning that petrodollar system will be completely dead. Even though it is already pretty much dead, the oil trade is already losing the dollar value. They're trading oil in other currencies now, and that's one thing. But that will be the final nail in the coffin, right? If this happens. So that's one attempt to stop all this. The second thing is, once again, the Abraham Accord, and third is to for maybe for to counter Iran, because Chinese are very well invested in Iran, Chinese and Russians over there. Okay, so there has to be a counter for Iran in that region, not just Israel, so that they can actually gang upon Iran if Saudis are a little bit proactive and they can do something. Okay, so um, so the overall, what does this whole thing mean for the de-dollarization? That's another thing. So if you look into it, then this is only going to say bolster more of dollar investment. It's not going to be $600 billion, regardless of what President Trump says. I don't believe a single word of it. Okay, so uh, how do I put it? Like, Saudis will basically, what they are going to do, they're going to take all this money, they're going to recycle it, put it back into the US market one way or the other. So meaning that that's going to help US actually print more money. Okay, they will print more money on the name of Saudi investment, and we don't know what Saudis are going to do with all the paper. And probably that's what Saudis are thinking, or everyone is thinking. Chances are that they may take that printed money and invest it into the crypto, use launch their own cryptos, launch their own stable coin, tokenized currency, right? And then push that into the US market. That's how probably it's going to be. And crypto, since crypto not being a actual tender, so it can float into the US market in a large amount without actually devaluing the dollar too. So the way I'm seeing it is that uh, US economy is going to take Africa turn. Okay, Africa turn meaning that lots of African countries are relying on the digital currency and the cryptos, because their currency is not that strong. So US is going to follow the same path using Saudi Arabia in this situation. Okay. So I hope you guys found this thing interesting, and please do like and subscribe, and I will talk to you guys in another video. Take care.